Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into a truly fascinating character study from the historical texts of the Bible, specifically King Asa. And I've got to tell you, what really surprised me when looking at the source material is that this isn't just dry ancient history. It is an absolute masterclass in leadership, crisis management, and the very real danger of spiritual drift.
To kick things off, we've got to ask a really intriguing question. Have you ever wondered why historical records can vary so wildly in how they treat the exact same person? Well, take a look at this legacy comparison. In the Book of Kings, King Asa's reign barely gets a mention. He gets roughly half a chapter. But flip over to the Book of Chronicles, and the author dedicates 3 entire, highly detailed chapters to him. So why the massive difference? It's because the chronicler recognized that Asa's life arc contains a critical, almost hidden lesson about the human heart, one that we literally cannot afford to miss.
But to truly grasp Asa's tragic fall, you first have to understand his incredible peak. Years before the events we're focusing on today, Asa faced a literal apocalyptic threat. We're talking an invading Ethiopian army of 1 million men. 1 million men. Just think about that number for a second in the context of the ancient world. That is an impossible, completely unsurvivable scenario, right? But what did Asa do? He prayed. He relied entirely, completely on God. And because of that total reliance, he experienced a miraculous, sweeping victory. This was a leader who knew exactly where his true strength came from.
Part 1. The geopolitical crisis and a smart human choice.
Well, success and time have a sneaky way of changing people, don't they? Fast forward a few years, Asa's kingdom is suddenly hit with a massive geopolitical crisis when Baasha, the king of northern Israel, becomes hostile. Now, Baasha begins aggressively fortifying a town called Ramah. Why is this specific town such a big deal? Because Ramah is just 8 kilometers, that's about 5 miles, north of Jerusalem. This is a strategic chokehold. It's essentially the ancient equivalent of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Baasha is setting up a direct military threat right on Asa's doorstep, effectively choking Jerusalem's security and cutting off all their lifelines.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds. Baasha fortifies Ramah, and the pressure is instantly on. But this time around, something is different. Asa panics. Instead of falling to his knees in prayer like he did with that million-man army, he makes a rapid, panicked, diplomatic decision. He goes straight into the sacred temple, empties the gold and silver right out of the treasury, and sends it to Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram. He's essentially buying a military alliance to attack Israel from the north.
And here is the profound twist in the text. Geopolitically speaking, Asa's bribe works perfectly. The king of Aram attacked the north, Baasha was forced to completely abandon the fortification of Ramah, and just like that, the immediate threat to Jerusalem was neutralized. On paper, Asa made a brilliant, quote-unquote, smart human choice. But from a spiritual perspective, the text reveals this was a massive, devastating failure.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast in Asa's leadership over time. Just look at that top row. In the past, against a terrifying 1 million-man Ethiopian army, he prayed, relied on God, and saw divine victory. But in the present, against Baasha's much smaller, localized threat, he just abandoned his faith. He looted the temple and bribed his way out of it. It really begs the question, how does a man who trusted God against 1 million soldiers suddenly resort to bribery against a minor threat?
Part 2. The prophet's rebuke and the linguistic twist.
That burning question brings us to a pivotal confrontation. God sends a seer, a prophet named Hanani, to sharply rebuke the king. Hanani's message is incredibly direct. He tells Asa that by placing his trust in the king of Aram, he has completely abandoned the God who gave him his greatest victories. And the original language Hanani uses here is absolutely fascinating. He tells Asa that he relied on Aram. The Hebrew word used in the text is sha'an. It means to lean on, to support oneself, or to shift one's center of gravity. This brilliantly illustrates that Asa's sin wasn't merely a bad diplomatic calculation. No, he completely shifted his life's center of gravity. When the pressure mounted, Asa took the full weight of his kingdom and leaned it onto a human king instead of his creator. Immediately following this, Hanani uses another critical phrase, Levav Shalem, which translates to a whole heart or an undivided heart. I just love this nuance in the translation because the text is emphasizing something incredibly beautiful here. God doesn't demand flawless, mistake-free perfection from humans. What he seeks is an undivided heart that is fully aimed at him, a heart that hasn't split its reliance between the divine and the worldly.
This brings us to one of the most famous verses in this text, 2 Chronicles 16:9. It reads, "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him." Now, if we slow down and really look at the context here, This isn't actually a threat of judgment. This is a profound invitation of grace. God is reminding Asa, right in the middle of his epic failure, that the divine gaze is still searching for him, ready to strengthen him if he will just turn his heart back.
Part 3. The Tragedy of an Unrepentant King.
So the crucial point is, tragically, Asa doesn't accept the invitation. Deep down, he knows the prophet is absolutely right, but his pride triggers an intense, blinding anger. He just cannot handle the truth of his own shifted allegiance. So he locks the door on repentance and goes into a tragic downward spiral. First, out of sheer anger, he imprisons Hanani the seer. Then, the text notes he begins violently oppressing his own people. Finally, in his twilight years, he develops a severe disease in his feet. And the source text is really clear here. Seeking medical help wasn't his sin, but his heart's posture definitely was. Even in excruciating pain, he stubbornly relied only on human physicians, completely refusing to seek God. He dies physically broken and spiritually hardened.
Part 4. The Parabolic Mirror. Where are you leaning? So, why does this 3,000-year-old text matter to us today? Well, because Asa's story acts like a parabolic mirror. It isn't just historical trivia. It maps out the anatomy of gradual spiritual drift. You see, spiritual downfall is rarely an overnight explosion where someone just wakes up and abandons their faith. It's a slow, subtle shift in what you lean on. You might still be attending Sunday worship. You might still be sitting in the exact same pew. But internally, your shan, your leaning, has changed. Your center of gravity has subtly shifted away from God and onto your bank account, your career, or your human connections.
Which demands we ask ourselves this incredibly direct question. When crisis hits, where does your gaze turn first? When a figurative army is fortifying a town just 5 miles away from your life, what do you instinctively lean on to fix it? Because whatever you lean on in that moment of panic, well, that's where your center of gravity truly rests.
The beautiful takeaway here is that even if you realize you've shifted your gaze, even if you've leaned your weight on the wrong things, just like King Asa did, the story doesn't have to end in pride and anger. God's eyes are continually ranging throughout the earth, searching for an undivided heart. He isn't looking for you to be perfect. He is simply inviting you to lean your weight back onto Him. So where are you leaning today? Let that question linger and consider how you might return your center of gravity.